Good morning. Welcome to our Sunday worship service. I'm Molly Smith, and I'll be your celebrant this morning. I've been a UU for about a decade now, more or less, and I'm especially excited about this service today because I've tried on a lot of theisms over the years. I'd like to extend a special welcome to all those who are joining us for the first time. We are very glad you are here. If you've come in person, we hope you have received a welcome packet with an information card in it. If you don't have one yet, please ask following the service. If you fill that out and drop it in the offering basket, we will be in touch to support you in finding your way into our community. If you're joining us online, there's a link on our website to an electronic version of that same card. Our welcoming committee members have yellow name tags and can answer any questions or point you toward additional information. Whether you are new or not, please consider staying for coffee and conversation after the service, either downstairs in our fellowship hall or in our Zoom room. If you'd prefer someplace a little quieter, you can also grab a beverage and head to the minister's office, which is on the ground floor, last door on the left, where a member of our worship team will host a smaller gathering. We want everyone to feel supported and at home here. And now let's say our words of welcome together. Whether it's your first or your 1000th Sunday with us, and whether you strolled, rolled, zoomed, ran, or danced in, we are glad you chose to join us. We are one people of many beliefs, identities, origins, sexualities, and genders. All are welcome here. Now we'll take a moment to say hello across the technical divide. First, we're going to show the people joining us on Zoom. If you're at home, please turn on your camera. Now, people at home, wave. Now, people who are attending the service in our building, it's your turn to wave. And we do have a couple of announcements. Suzanne?
Hi, I'm Suzanne Senior, and I'm the church board president.
The microphone up above.
All right.
Oh, wait, no, he just turned it on. He just turned the floor one on.
So the board would like to call an all-congregation meeting on March 22nd so that the Committee on Ministry can present the results of the revising of the covenant. So March 22nd, all-congregation meeting. Thank you.
You want to say what else we're going to do that day? We're celebrating Hayes.
We're also celebrating the church is going to pay its mortgage off. Woo!
And we have one other announcement. That first, we'll have a table downstairs for Idaho voter registration for the May 19th primary. If you moved and didn't vote last year, check your Idaho registration or request an absentee ballot. Here end the announcements. The land on which our church is built is part of the ancestral homeland of the Nimipu, the people, mistakenly called the Nez Perce or Pierce Noses by the French-speaking trappers and traders. We acknowledge this land is held in sacred kinship since time immemorial. The land and its peoples suffered immeasurable trauma brought by Euro-American society, and we are working with its resilient peoples to show respect and contribute to the healing and nurturing of this precious land and all its peoples. We're hoping that folks joining us via Zoom have a chalice or a candle to light and something to light it with. Let's light our chalices together. Do we have a chalice lighter this morning? Yes, we do. In the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek and seek to share.
Good morning. I'm the Reverend Dr. Elizabeth Stevens, and I'm lucky enough that I get to serve this congregation as its minister. This world we live in is hard to make sense of, especially these days. As citizens of this country, it's particularly complicated to come to terms with the irresponsible and immoral choices the current administration is making. This morning we are at war. I want to acknowledge that. I want to name that I'm scared for the future, and I'm assuming I'm not the only one. But this world is the world we're living in, and if we stop living in it fully and deeply and joyfully, then the forces of fear and hatred win. And while historically it's been used as a tool of control and division far too often, the actual purpose of religion is to support us in living lives of depth and meaning. So while I do want to acknowledge up front that we're holding a lot today, we're going to go ahead and talk about theology anyway. I'm not sure I have anything helpful to say about the state of the world in any event, beyond I love you. And don't forget to breathe. And we're going to get through this if we stick together, okay? Okay. So 2 weeks ago, we explored atheist spirituality, and today we're going to look at affirmatism. Well, it's perfectly okay as a Unitarian Universalist not to believe in God. For those of us who do believe, at least occasionally, what might this complicated and weighted word mean? So I'm going to start us off with 4 different definitions offered by Unitarian Universalist luminaries.
From Forest Church, though easily reduced to an idol, God is still the biggest word I know. It points toward a power beyond our own, yet mysteriously present within us.
Rebecca Parker's definition: God is not an all-determining creator. Each creature is self-creating in relationship with all other creatures, including God. So we are co-creators with the divine. We make God as much as God makes us.
Jane Malden. I would say that God is the creative force that has cast each of us into this world. God is the love in and between people. God does not willfully direct hurricanes onto the beaches of the unjust. God is the moral conscience that demands we walk these beaches hand in hand, building together where hurricanes have destroyed.
Jack Mendelson says, God to me is the spirit of a spiritual universe in which all life shares an associated and interdependent destiny. God is the glorious sum of the living process in which I, as a person, live, strive, and die. God is the existence I share with all that is or is to be. So we're not talking about the Charlton Heston lookalike that you saw in your child's illustrated Bible, right? Now, it's not for me to decide whether some concept of God has any place at all in your spiritual life, but I do want to just expand your options today in case one of the more nuanced flavors of theism might be useful to you in making sense of the world and or experiencing life more fully. So I hope you'll listen with an open mind and heart, and remember that while it's okay to not believe in God, it's not okay to look down on people who do. Let's start together by singing hymn number 298, Wake Now, My Senses. Now I invite the children forward for a story. If you brought non-perishable goods for our little free pantry, go ahead and bring them with you. I invite you now into a time of meditation or prayer with this poem by Nancy Schaefer called That Which Holds It All. Because she wanted everyone to feel included in her prayer, she said right at the beginning several names for the holy. Spirit, she said, Holy One, Mystery, God. But then, thinking these weren't enough ways of addressing that which cannot be fully addressed, she added particularities, saying, Spirit of life, Spirit of love, Ancient Holy One, mystery we will not ever fully know, gracious God, and also Spirit of this earth, God of Sarah, Gaia, Thou. And then her tongue loosened, she fell to naming superlatives as well. Most creative one, greatest source, closest hope. Even though superlatives for the sacred seemed to her probably redundant, but then she couldn't stop. One who made the stars, she said. Although she knew technically a number of those present didn't believe the stars had been made by anyone or thing, but just luckily happened. That which has been present since before the beginning, she said, and the room was silent. And then, although she hadn't imagined it this way, others began to offer names. Peace, said one. One my mother knew, said another. Ancestor, said a third. Wind, rain, breath, said one near the back. Refuge, that which holds all. A child said water. Someone said Kuan Yin, then womb, witness, great kindness, great eagle, eternal stillness. And then there wasn't any need to say the things she'd thought would be important to say. And everyone sat hushed until someone said, Amen. Gorgeous, thank you. Our reading this morning comes from God, A Human History of Religion by Reza Aslan. Faith is a choice. Anyone who says otherwise is trying to convert you. You either choose to believe that there is something beyond the material realm, something real, something knowable, or you don't. If, like me, you do, then you must ask yourself another question. Do you wish to experience this thing? Do you wish to commune with it, to know it? If so, then it may help to have a language with which to express what is fundamentally an inexpressible experience. That is where religion comes in. Beyond the myths and rituals, the temples and cathedrals, the do's and don'ts that have for millennia separated humanity in different and often competing camps of belief, religion is little more than a language made up of symbols and metaphors that allows believers to communicate to one another and to themselves the ineffable experience of faith. It's just that throughout the history of religions, there's been one symbol that has stood out as universal and supreme, one grand metaphor for God from which practically every other symbol and metaphor in nearly all the world's religions has been derived: us, the human being. There are, as one can imagine, certain consequences to this natural impulse to humanize the divine, for when we endow God with human attributes, we essentially divinize those attributes so that everything good or bad about our religions is merely a reflection of what is good, of everything that is good or bad about us. Our desires become God's desires, but without boundaries. Our actions become God's actions, but without consequence. We create a superhuman being endowed with human traits, but without human limitations. We fashion our religions and cultures, our societies and governments according to our own human urges, all the while convincing ourselves that those urges are God's. That, more than anything else, explains why throughout human history, religion has been a force both for boundless good and for unspeakable evil. Growing up in a Unitarian Universalist fellowship with a very convicted and vocal atheist for a dad, and a much quieter agnostic for a mom, to be honest, I didn't think all that much about God. There were a couple of times that stick in my mind. I remember in first grade when one of my friends told me I was going to hell, and I came home all upset, and my parents told me that people believe all kinds of things, and that in their mind, as far as my parents were concerned, if there was only one right answer, there would be only one right answer. A loving God wouldn't make it all so confusing, and I didn't need to worry about it. It made sense to me, so I let it go. Then, starting in about the second grade, I know I'm weird, I went through this phase of being absolutely fascinated by the Holocaust. I read everything I could get my hands on, fiction, nonfiction, even plays. Does anyone remember I Never Saw Another Butterfly? Yeah? I watched movies and documentaries. I still actually have nightmares about the footage the Allies shot when they liberated the death camps. Wrapping my head around those horrors made me deeply suspicious of religion, particularly Christianity, but because I also read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning for the first time as an 8th grader. Like I said, I was a weirdo. I wasn't willing to give up on God or religion altogether. The summer after my junior year in high school, I took an intensive on human understanding and the search for meaning. I read Frankl for the 3rd time, and I got introduced to Paul Tillich. Tillich, of course, defines God as our ultimate concern, and argues that everyone has an ultimate concern, and therefore everyone has a God, even atheists whose ultimate concern is proving God's non-existence. To be totally honest, Tillich still kind of confuses me. So I settled on a practice of being grateful to be alive and had a vague sort of working definition of God as a placeholder word that means that which I am grateful to. And it worked for me for a very long time, actually, all through college and my young adult years, right up through my second year in seminary when I took 2 classes. The first was taught by a Franciscan priest, and it was called The God Problem. We talked about why the humanization of God is so problematic and explored all kinds of other metaphors. At the same time, I was taking a class from Rebecca Parker on process theology, which is a metaphysic based on particle physics, in which God is defined as the force in the universe that lures us all toward justice, joy, peace, and the best possible outcome, both for us as individuals and for the planet. I found it all really fascinating to think about, talk about, wonder about. And then one night I had this dream, this incredibly vivid dream. In it, I was having a passionate affair with this glowing, beautiful being. But what was so strange about it is I didn't feel guilty. Even though I was married, both in the dream and in real life, my spouse knew about this affair and supported both it and me. It was a really vivid dream, and I could not stop thinking about it. I literally would sort of walk around talking about it with just about anyone, which you can get away with when you're in seminary. And, I just asking, do you have any idea what this could have meant? What does it mean? Eventually, I was talking to one particular friend who had taken the class in dream interpretation, and she took my hand and said ever so gently, in the dream world, sex is usually a metaphor for your relationship with the divine. I was gobsmacked. Did that mean I actually believed in God? Maybe it did. Maybe it does. Although it might be more accurate to say that I sometimes find the word God a convenient shorthand. Henry Nelson Wyman defines God as that which is worth dedicating our lives to. I've dedicated my life to a particular vision, a world where all children grow up safe and loved, and all adults accept themselves and others unconditionally, a world where we live in harmony with one another and the natural world. So the word God evokes for me this task, this dream, this vision. What do you believe is worth dedicating your life to? And what would it feel like to name that God? The God of process theology that Rebecca taught about makes sense to me as well. I find it useful to believe that there's a force at work in the universe steering it toward goodness and love by acting on each of us as co-creators of reality, inviting us to be our best selves. It takes away that burden, that voice inside that says it's my job to fix the whole mess all by myself. If I just have to do my part, and if I can just trust my still small voice to let me know what my specific part is, then I can just keep doing the next right thing. I don't have to worry so much about the big picture. It keeps me moving forward without getting stuck or sinking into despair. This next part feels a little vulnerable, but I also want to share that beyond the fun intellectual explorations of theology, I've had some pretty powerful mystical experiences. I've talked before about feeling led by that still small voice, but there have also been moments when I've experienced these waves of love and acceptance wash over me, and that's helped me love and accept myself. I've had dark nights of the soul when I felt completely abandoned and alone, and then this energy finds me and wraps me up in goodness and lifts me out of the darkness and instills a sense of peace. And last but not least, I've had moments of transcendence where I felt connected to all that is. And those moments keep me humble, grateful, and open to experiences of wonder, awe, and beauty. Now, I am very aware that these experiences might be products of a fevered imagination, but they feel real. And more importantly, they've shaped me and changed my life for the better. They're a big part of why on some days, occasionally Thursdays, but also on other days of the week, I do identify as a theist. Now, I don't think we have to believe in God in order to understand that existence is sacred, but I do think that if we play in this particular sandbox, experimenting with different metaphors and trying on a wide variety of definitions for the word God, we might just uncover some treasures that could enrich our lives. But I think we need to bring a lightheartedness to the exploration. It feels like high stakes, given the damage that people have done over the years in the name of a God they created in their own image. But if we just start from the place where we understand it's all made up anyway, can we hold it a little more lightly? Can we enter into theological conversations with beginner's mind, maintaining a sense of curiosity and a willingness to be wrong? Now, clearly, anthropomorphizing God is a dangerous thing to do, but it can also be helpful, actually. People who didn't have a loving and supportive father might feel safer or more grounded if they imagine a loving and supportive Father God. People who felt like second-class citizens because of their gender or some other aspect of their identity can benefit from embracing a God made in their own image. Studying goddess spirituality, for instance, has helped countless women step into their own power. Then there's a whole universe full of non-human metaphors we can try on. God as the wind, or as an invisible thread that connects us all, as the love that holds us no matter what. God as the interdependent web of light. Heck, you can even imagine a flying spaghetti monster if that makes you happy. Having some working concept of a God that transcends our human limitations can help us make peace with our human limitations. There are even some really interesting representations of God in the movies or on TV. Morgan Freeman is way more appealing, for instance, than Charlton Heston. But I'm wondering if anyone else has watched Lucifer. Any other Lucifer fans? Okay, so I found its theology quite compatible with my own, very healthy. And God on that show is burnt out, slightly irritable. He's an old man who wants to hand over the whole mess to his kids and just go off and be with his wife, the goddess who created the universe in the first place. This God is defensive, but also apologetic about the fact that he's the one who kicked her out of heaven in the first place, as if he realizes the harm that was done by patriarchal monotheism. Now, in a Unitarian Universalist context, our theological explorations aren't boundaried by tradition or other people's opinions, but they do have boundaries. For example, if it's going to have any integrity, whatever understanding of God we play with has to take evil, suffering, and the human proclivity to cause harm into account. We need to wrestle with the problem of theodicy. If God is all-loving and all-powerful, how could God possibly allow atrocities like the Holocaust, like Gaza, like pedophilia and human trafficking, like the senseless bombing of schools? Bill Schultz, who served as president of the Unitarian Universalist Association as well as executive director of Amnesty International, once charged a room full of Unitarian Universalist ministers to reject any concept of God that doesn't account for torture. He writes in an article in the UU World called "What Torture Has Taught Me," "I would submit that no God worthy of the name is present in a torture chamber. The torture victims I've encountered often talk about how they survived by focusing on loved ones, their political cause, their hatred for their torturer, or their comradeship with other prisoners. But they rarely mention God or faith." He continues, "I'm not trying to score some cheap point against the notion of God. Over the years, I have myself become increasingly comfortable using the word to describe the source of graciousness upon which we depend for our very lives. All I am saying is that whatever our conception of God, should we have one, it needs to be both complex enough and circumscribed enough to account for the fact that God's absence, true absence, is as real a phenomenon as God's immanence." For my own part, I solved the dilemma by releasing any notion of an all-powerful God. I can't make myself believe in a God that makes things happen, either good things or bad things. I can, though, imagine a God that is all-loving, pervasively present, and grieving alongside us when confronted by suffering or evil. Another boundary has to do with the consequences of our beliefs. If what we imagine about God, or anything else really, enables or encourages cruelty, selfishness, or a sense of superiority, that runs counter to our shared values. Now, our beliefs alone don't move us outside the limits of our covenant, but our actions can, and bad beliefs inspire bad actions. So it behooves us to think that through and pay attention. Perhaps the most important boundary has to do with how we interact with people whose beliefs are different than our own. We do not proselytize here. We don't expect other people to share our beliefs or follow our lead. We don't judge or look down on people who don't share our particular set of beliefs. It's important not to question the intelligence or the legitimacy of another person's spiritual path. But within those boundaries, there is so much freedom. So don't be afraid to venture in, to dig around. Just play. What if God is like a golden retriever? That would be a pretty nice God. What would it feel like to be a pantheist, to believe that everything is part of God? Or a panentheist, believing that the divine interpenetrates every particle of the universe? What would it feel like to name God that love that holds us, that love that we sing about every week? See, just because it's all made up doesn't mean it doesn't matter. Because what we believe influences how we behave, how we feel, who we become, who we are. So it behooves us to choose wisely. In the case for God, Karen Armstrong writes, "The point of religion is to live intensely and richly here and now. Truly, religious people are ambitious. They want lives overflowing with significance. They've always desired to integrate with their daily lives the moments of rapture and insight that came to them in dreams, in their contemplation of nature, and in their intercourse with one another and with the animal world. Instead of being crushed and embittered by the sorrow of life, they sought to retain their peace and serenity in the midst of their pain. They yearned for the courage to overcome their terror of mortality. Instead of being grasping and mean-spirited, they aspired to live generously, large-heartedly, and justly, and to inhabit every single part of their humanity." We don't have to believe in God to be religious, but we do have to make sure that any God we choose to believe in points us in the right direction. And if we're doing it right, our spiritual life and our religious choices will keep changing over time. We'll keep exploring and growing and figuring out how to live ever more fully. This community exists in part to provide an incubator, a place where we hold one another as we do this weird meaning-making thing that humans seem to do. Our job, our gift to one another, is to create a space where each and every one of us can find the beliefs that support fuller and more loving lives. So be it, and so may it be. I invite you to rise now in body or spirit. We're going to sing one of my favorite hymns that I'm usually too nervous to sing, but I just talked about God, so we get to sing about God. Number 29, Joyful, Joyful, We Adore Thee. Our closing reading is God Says Yes to Me by Kaylin Hott. I asked God if it was okay to be melodramatic, and she said yes. I asked her if it was okay to be short, and she said it sure is. I asked her if I could wear nail polish or not wear polish, and she said, honey, she calls me that sometimes. She said, you can do just exactly what you want to do. Thanks, God, I said. And is it even okay if I don't paragraph my letters? Sweet cakes, God said. Who knows where she picked that up? What I'm telling you is yes, yes, yes. Let's sing together our benediction, There is a Love. Please say with me the words to embody our chalice flame. We extinguish this chalice that it might glow gently in our hearts. May it light our paths as we leave this place. May it guide our path until we're together again. It's in back. There it is. You know, I think this is the secret to it. Don't take it all too seriously. I mean, God has been weaponized so many times. How do we turn the idea, the concept, into a shield that protects us and our goodness, that protects the people around us? How do we find ways to use that word that move us all in the right direction? Don't be afraid of it. It's all pretend. But just because something's imaginary doesn't mean it isn't real, right? It makes a difference. It changes who we are, how we are, and it changes the shape of the world. So, if you feel like it, wade on in. I love you all. Go in peace. Come back next Sunday.